Welcome to my podcast, Transformational Conversations. And this week I'm here with James Ainsworth. James is a fellow podcaster, speaker, firefighter, and farmer. He's very passionate about personal and spiritual development and has been on an absolutely wild transformation. So tell me about your wild transformation. James, let's go straight in.
So let's start right at the beginning, more or less. So I was born on a farm, so I had all the great fun of being on the farm and playing with animals. Probably sounds quite wrong, really, but kind of having adventures, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
At the same time, realised later on, before it even happened, that I was one of those really, really nice guys. And it was something which impacted my life in quite a big way. And my first major relationship was later on in life, and at the age of 30. During this relationship, I didn't realise at the time, I kind of went through this relationship as Mr. Nice Guy. I would allow her to treat me wrongly. I would kind of hate to get into an argument, which then, if it was kind of turned the other way, I would feel this anxiety, this fear, but I would never have the courage to really stand up for myself. And so after about 9 months, luckily for me, because this was the beginning of my transformation. So really, the relationship was a blessing, especially the end of the relationship and the breakup. Even though at the time when you have a breakup, it's not a blessing, and you're always in that kind of that grieving, that kind of hard place to be. But the relationship led me into a mild depression. I was at my lowest, and I had this kind of fear, I had anxiety, I had depression. I was working on my dad's farm full time, which I didn't really enjoy, which I'm still doing 2 days a week at the moment, but it's changing. And so I was kind of lost. I didn't really have a purpose. I didn't really have any direction. But it was within this 6 months that I decided to have a psychic reading. And the one clear thing that I remember from that psychic reading was that I could do what she was doing. So that's what got me intrigued, and that's where I was led on to Reiki. And I kept seeing Reiki this, Reiki that, and all these different things. And I decided okay, I'm in this place where I'm in depression, I've got anxiety, I've got all this wounds, all these kind of things happening to me which I didn't know about, and I needed an answer. So I went for some Reiki healing, and it felt good after the first session. So I went for another, and another, and another, and each time I was getting a little bit better. The idea was, in my own head, was to work towards building confidence and more self-esteem in myself so that I could get back with my ex. Right. Little did I know that as I went along the line, that it's not about getting back with your ex, it's about coming back to yourself. And so I did Reiki level 1, did level 2. I haven't done a master's, but I did 1 and 2, and it just opened me up. Literally just opened me up. And this is just the first 2 years of my life. First 2 years of my transformation, not my life.
Yeah. The first 2 years of your true life, of your real life, your awakened life, yeah.
Well, it's shedding all the old layers kind of thing. And I did lots of different modalities and different techniques. I did Psyche, which is all about changing your subconscious beliefs. I did hypnotherapy and all these different things. And I suppose as you go along life, you tend to find what you need at the time. And then you move on. So it's like I found Reiki. Or I found me, shall I say. And I did Reiki, and then I've kind of moved on. But I feel as though along the journey, you find what you need. So I never feel there's one thing fits all. I feel there's many different things are needed to heal our wounds, to heal and to take the layers off.
Totally. And sometimes I feel like it's about the actual teacher or the mentor or the person you're working with as well. Like you saying you went to Psych K and Reiki. Reiki was the first thing I did. I've done Psych K as well. The similarities in our journeys are like unreal. We've spoken about some of this stuff before, but going back a little bit to how this started with you and your ex. I think sometimes when we feel such a deep connection to a person in a connected and romantic way, like you said, it was the first time you'd felt that way about a woman. I had exactly the same. That was what led me to finding out more about myself as well. I was with a woman. She was deeply traumatized, and she tried to inflict physical and emotional pain on me as well. And at the time, I was doing this similar thing to you, probably being the nice guy, trying to pacify it, putting up with a lot, allowing it, when it wasn't until something a bit more serious happened that we ended up splitting up. And I was like, wow, I felt such intensity in this relationship. How can I feel that again? Not necessarily with her. We did get back together briefly, but I'm really interested in, I like the way you talk about how the universe was talking to you as well through seeing Reiki everywhere. And, many people talk about numerology and seeing signs like 1111, 2222 and things like that. One of my friends he just keeps seeing 444 everywhere. Number plates, like phone numbers. He actually gets up at 4:44 every morning just because that's where his numbers are at the moment. Going back to your journey, what happened after you started experiencing all this extra life affirming, transformational experiences?
Just to clarify, today when I was coming back with a client, there's a lorry with 5 digits, a phone number, and then it was 44444. I was like, Christ almighty, come on. Yeah, but I'm the same. I see numerology everywhere. I see quite often, most days, I'm 1111. I'll see 1444. Yeah, with regards to my transformation, the one thing that I always had help. I always had a teacher or somebody who was there to kind of give me a little bit of guidance. And just to clarify this a little bit more, sometimes we feel we need to do all this stuff alone, but we don't. The strongest thing that we can have is by having somebody there who can help us along our journey. It hasn't got to be a coach, because you might not have the money for a coach. But if you've got a friend or a family member who can help you along these lines of what you're going through, having somebody there to tell you your blind spots, as they call them, can help you to see what's going on. Because sometimes we get so narrow focused, we can't see everything from that way all around us. So we're only looking that way.
What I say is, people who have been there and done the thing that you are trying to achieve, have they gone through a difficult, traumatic relationship breakup? Have they, done Reiki? Have they done kinesiology or coaching or whatever it is that thing that you're looking for? Have they achieved that goal? Therefore, they're able to give you the insights, the experience, the journey, and like you said, blind spots and anything else that you might not necessarily be able to see yet or be aware of yet.
Bang on. It's also, so along my journey, I always think to myself, how can I make my journey more interesting rather than splurting out everything that I've done? So when I got to a certain point 2 or 3 years down the line, I was starting to realise that... No, actually, sorry, I'm going to drop back a little bit. So one of my biggest fears was public speaking. That was always one of my biggest fears. And so quite soon after the breakup, so probably a year after the breakup, I decided to join Toastmasters with the idea of breaking that fear. And I assume you've done the same as well.
I have been to a couple of classes, yes. I haven't done the whole journey, but the class that I went to was absolutely phenomenal. The way they give feedback in those classes is amazing. And no wonder it's such an incredible transformational process. It's something I do want to go back to at some point. and learn the storytelling process, because that's what they're teaching, or in a way understand the format and the structure and the curriculum. So yeah, there's a lot of similarity with what we've done. That's incredible.
We might as well just be a mirror. We might as well just be a mirror, shall we?
Exactly.
But it's with the Toastmasters, I kind of, after about 5 or 6 times, I started to realise I actually enjoy doing it. And so that was one of my ways into starting to do public speaking. So I've done public speaking as well, speaking in front of schools, speaking in front of audiences. And actually, I'll just quickly bring us one story to do with speaking. A couple of years ago, I went to the Professional Speaking Association, and they had a conference. And I was entering this competition, and you had to do like a 5-minute speech. And the idea here was that you were competing against probably another 10 people in front of about 100 professional speakers. So it was quite a big thing. And I got onto the stage when it was my turn, and the 5-minute speech that I had, I completely forgot. I completely froze. And then I got the first sentence, and then I froze again. And I was like, shit. This is it. I've got two options here. Now I either run off the stage with my tail between my legs, or trust myself and allow myself to speak from the heart. And that's what I did. And I must admit, I think I said 3 or 4 swear words throughout the 5 minutes. But I was the only one out of the whole everybody who got a standing ovation. I didn't get through to the finals, but I got a standing ovation.
That's incredible.
So the lesson there for me was that it's not about having a set speech. It's about trusting yourself to know that when the time comes, you will know what to say. And this goes for relationships, it goes for work, it goes for any time in our life. It's trusting ourselves.
Man, totally. Speaking from the heart just is so much more authentic than having a pre-prepared speech, because it can come across as quite mechanical sometimes, can't it? And people can see through that straight away, I feel.
Yeah. But it's obviously there's an ounce of preparation you need to go in. And when you do a talk, you have to do some preparation for that and have an idea of what you're going to talk about. But it's about trusting when it comes to the bulk of the talk or whatever it is. It's trusting that you know your content and you can deliver. So back to the transformation. It was after starting to do Toastmasters, I was then looking at how I can start to really incorporate speaking into my everyday. And I was looking at festivals I can do workshops. And so the first festival, which was the Sun and Moon Festival, which I've done for 5 years, I've stopped now, but I did it for 5 years, was at this festival there was this thing called laughter yoga. And laughter yoga blew me away. First session, after the session, I had this smile on my face. And this led me on to the idea that I could do this myself. So again, I did laughter yoga, and I taught laughter yoga for many, many years. Back in 2018, I started my own business with PT, with nutrition. The laughter yoga came later on. 2 or 3 years ago, I started men's work, the Mankind Project, Warrior Weekend. And in the Warrior Weekend, you turn up and you don't know what's going on. I can't say too much, but it's a very eye-opening weekend. It's very transformative. It's the idea of sometimes being in discomfort, you're more likely to bring up your own emotions. So it's about bringing your whole self to the occasion and being able to embrace the whole self.
Okay.
And yeah, it's kind of just led on from the Mankind Project to the Unmasked Man to lots of different things. But the other day I was working with my coach, and I was just kind of scanning myself, because I'm very intuitive. So I can, when it comes to connecting to myself on a deep, deep level, I find after doing it for 8 years, it's quite easy now. And there's this idea that when I first came out of my breakup, I felt very heavy, very overloaded. I had a lot of limiting beliefs, a lot of baggage, a lot of resistance to different things. And then just the other day, I was scanning my body with my coach, and I've cleared almost 99% of all that stuff over the last 8 years. And there's a few little things left. Most of them are to do with relationships. That's one area in my life I seem to be getting shadows at the moment, the relationships.
Yeah.
But it's this idea that when you do the work, whether it's personal and spiritual development, you clear stuff dead easy, because when you do the work, you are able to go in deeper to who you really are. And I've noticed recently that a lot of people using the word spiritual. When it comes to spiritual, I see it more as getting to the core of who we really are, getting to our true essence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in this group called Spiritual Dating, and there's a lot of people saying, this person isn't spiritual. And I'm like, I'm not commenting in any way, because I don't really want to get involved. How can we judge people on whether they're spiritual or not if we don't even know them?
Yeah.
And we're just going on face value.
I think sometimes people will see things that other people aren't doing that they've done, which they refer to as spiritual development, which is personal development, evolution, is being open enough to see things in yourself that you're willing to change. So being open enough to say, well, actually, yeah, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm right on that. Maybe I do need to change on this belief system, this personality trait, something about my identity that's, causing friction in relationships or stuff like that. I think once you get down to the nuts and bolts, like you said, you've done 99% of the shadow clearance or clearing the heaviness out of your system after your last relationships. When you start to get down to the stuff that was imprinted at a very early age by our parents without us being, sometimes that can be pre-verbal, sometimes that can be past life stuff that we bring into this world, tied into our DNA, tied into our psyche, tied into our spirituality or our mindset. Sometimes we need to delve into that as well and start to understand why we behave in a certain way, why we react in a certain way, why we keep re-experiencing things. It's like the universe keeps sending us messages until we start to listen. So yeah, I really hear you on the personal transformation and people pointing a finger at what's not spiritual and what is spiritual. So what would you define spirituality as?
For me, spirituality comes to coming back to our true essence. So it's allowing ourselves to take away the faces that we carry. It's about coming back to center, coming back to our heart, kind of discovering who we really are and allowing ourselves to take that out into the real world. So being able to going to different experiences and discovering our shadows, because every experience quite often brings our shadow. Or so just to clarify, the shadow is the part of us that we deny or we push away. And then there's the golden shadow, which is the bright parts of us, which as a child we might get told you're too confident, and so you kind of hide that away. So there's the shadow and the golden shadow.
I love that. I've not heard that before, like the golden shadow. Yeah, that's powerful. Golden, that is. I love that. How coincidental that I've just literally yesterday received, so I've been having singing lessons for 5 years, and yesterday I received my version of Golden by Harry Styles. So
nice.
The timing of our conversation and that conversation, golden shadow, I love it. So,
well, you see it perfectly with screaming girls with regards to pop stars. I almost feel sometimes when you see screaming girls screaming at their stars, they're almost given their power wakes to see them as brilliant, but they're not accepting that brilliance themselves.
The thing is, like the similar conversation I was having this morning, so many people are looking outside of themselves, grasping outside of themselves for something to latch onto, to give them a sense of happiness, fulfillment, joy, security, safety, whatever it is, rather than looking inside and going inside for that inner sense of security, safety, contentment, joy, satisfaction. Literally, we can provide ourselves everything that we need. You know, sometimes when we're small children, when we're babies, we do need to be looked after. But after we get to a certain age and maturity, or it's best for us to develop the skills to be able to self-soothe, self-appreciate, self-love, because the more we love ourselves, the more we're able to love other people. We can't love anybody else any more than we love ourselves. So once we start to work on ourselves and, like you said, peel all the layers back, find out what's underneath, find out what I like, what I authentically like, you know, does this feel good to me? Does this not feel good to me? Some of the stuff you were talking about, like, you know, going to festivals and listening to certain kinds of music and trialing out different practices like Reiki and Bowen and Psych K and things like that. Trying out all these different things and seeing what feels good to us, what works and what brings out our innermost divine aspects of authenticity so that we can live a more divine life. I find the way I describe things is the more authentic we become, the more we peel the layers back, peeling the onion, as some people call it, taking the layers away of all of these masks that we put on to please other people, to receive love from other people, to be accepted by other people in society, in our family, in our schools, in our what we see in the media as well. As soon as we start to peel all these layers back, we start to truly discover who we are underneath all of that and what we enjoy doing, what brings us satisfaction, what really lights us up, you know. So like where you are at the moment, what's really lighting you up at the moment?
You're going to laugh at this one because you already know. Ecstatic dance. Not static dance, ecstatic dance.
It's like when the music just stands still.
Yeah. Boop. Again, dance used to terrify me. And to do dance sober, I was like, my God, it was actually quite soon after a breakup, December 2022, and I was after somewhere where I can go and enjoy myself, but also push my boundaries. And I went to a static dance in Nottingham, and ever since then I've been going most weeks fortnightly. And I've done a few festivals, a few retreats, and yeah, it's just what I've kind of realised is the more that I do it, the more that I free flow. It's incredible. A couple of weeks ago, I did a dance retreat, and for the 5 days, I was just flowing. Yeah,
love that. I'm a big fan of ecstatic dance as well. Like we've spoken about this briefly before, but the sense of freedom that you get from just dancing, because no one's judging you, no one's looking, everybody's doing the most crazy stuff that you can imagine. The first one I ever went to, I walked into the room and I was a little bit like, you know, I love dancing. I used to love dancing when I was out drinking alcohol, and when I gave up alcohol, I did do a little bit of dancing sober, but not so much. You know, there was normally some sort of drugs involved, so it wasn't a totally sober experience. So when I first went to my first ecstatic dance, there was somebody laying on the floor wearing ballet clothes and outfits, and the guy just lied there for the first 15-20 minutes, just like very slowly moving around. I was like, well, this is interesting. I've never been to anything like this before. And as I started to warm myself up and just close my eyes and just not care about what anybody else thought, started to get into the music and just like free flow. And it is the most freeing experience to be able to do that in front of a room full of people all doing the same thing. It's so liberating to do that stone cold sober. It's one of my favourite things to do as well. I would actually love to come along to the Nottingham one with you at some point. Or it'd be good to. I've not been to that one, so it'd be good to come up and try different ecstatic dance, different DJs, styles of music, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, man.
The one I just did on Sunday, it was fancy dress, so I dressed in a pink tutu and I had a wizard's hat on. I don't know, but the idea here was that when I was dancing, I felt very connected to people. But the more that I tried to connect to people, the more disconnected I felt. And so the lesson there for me was to be able to connect to myself first. Because when I connect to myself, it's easy to connect with people around you. Because I'm an introvert. I am an introvert. I can be extrovert if I want to be, but it's more the idea that if I'm around people for too long, I get drained. And especially if I'm around people who I'm not in alignment with, I get very drained very easy. So I have to take myself away to ground, to get into nature, to talk things through. I had this with the dance retreat I went to not long ago, was the realization that there's times when I'm able to give myself to people, and there's times when I need to take a step back and to ground.
It's so important to know where your energy levels are internally without burning yourself out or giving too much or receiving too much as well. You know, sometimes I'm very similar to you. I am probably on the scale of introvert. I'm not totally extroverted. So most of my energy comes from, spending time on my own, being alone. But I also have found over the past 6 or 7 months that I need more time with people. So I've been making more time to meet up with friends and go out and enjoy social activities more often than I was before, because that's just where I am on my journey at the moment. And becoming aware of that has been a really important part of my personal development as well.
Quickly, for me, it's connecting with people who are in alignment with where I am. I've noticed over the years that friends, should I say, have dropped away. And I feel as though that's because I feel as though I've leveled up. And so it's finding your tribe, people who align with you, is so important.
People who you can have the conversations with that we're having now, and them not look at you and, say, I would never do that, or that's not something I enjoy, or that sounds really shit, or, something. I'm not saying their words are draining. It's just to be on the same frequency and have the same level of interest and conversation about the same subjects can be quite important sometimes. And that's not to say you have to ditch all your family and all your friends. You just have to be aware of how much time you're spending with them, and what your conversations are like, and where you go and what you do and things like that. There's no point in going to, for me now, there's no point in going to a pub with someone. I don't drink alcohol. I've got no interest in being in that kind of environment anymore. It doesn't light me up. So meeting up with a friend and going to a pub is a very, very, very unusual experience for me now. It's been such a long time. Do you drink alcohol?
So I'm not stone cold sober, but what I've come to realise, especially with dancing sober, is that I feel less inclined towards alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. I never did drugs anyway, but I'm less and less inclined to go and do it, simply because I know what I'm going to be like next day, and I'd rather not do that. Don't get me wrong, now and again, on a very rare occasion, it's nice to have a beer, but I don't make a habit of it at all. I can go 2 or 3 months without having any and not be fussed. Every couple of weeks, my friend comes over, I've got myself a sauna, so we have a sauna session, and I used to have drinks with him. The last 2 or 3 times, I said, I'm all right, I'm going to drink water.
Yeah, it's almost like your vibration has changed so much now that alcohol doesn't vibrate with your system very well. I kind of feel the same. If I was to drink, I had a non-alcoholic beer a couple of weeks ago, and I woke up next morning and I still feel like I had a bit of a hangover. So I was like, well, there's no point in me really drinking it. I can get away with drinking a tonic water or soda water or something like that if I am out with friends. And I still enjoy myself as much, probably more, because I'm sober. I remember the conversations. We have good, deep, meaningful conversations, and, we ate great food as well. There's no downsides the next day.
One thing I've noticed, this is something quite fresh and quite raw, but one thing I've noticed recently is because I feel as though I'm leveling up. There used to be a time when I used to go CrossFit or used to go out and I used to say, she looks nice, kind of idea. But I feel as though I'm almost leveling up, and I got to a point where I don't fancy them anymore. What I'm noticing is that women especially have always been something that I've struggled with, relationships side of things, and I thought this might help any men out there, or any women out there as well. It might kind of help by being a bit vulnerable. There's an idea that what I've noticed is that there's certain people, certain women, where I go in to have a conversation with them, but I almost drop back into my body and I feel as though there's that sense of unworthiness. And this brings up this kind of awkward, embarrassing idea with regards to the interaction. So just the other day, I had this interaction with this girl, and I usually get on with her quite fine. It kind of led to something, and she was kind of like setting me back, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she just kind of looked at me and walked off. Felt quite embarrassed. I felt quite unworthy. And this is what some of my triggers. So what I've noticed, as you level up, there'll be certain things happen to you, certain triggers. And in the moment, it's quite hard to kind of figure this out in the moment. You see it later on after it's happened most of the time. Yeah. And it's realization that there's still part of me which drops back into my head when it comes to interaction with women. And it's this idea that I feel a little bit unworthy still.
Totally. And I feel like I think probably because the way that women are portrayed in the media, a lot of men do have a similar kind of experience with that as well. Sometimes people can become a little bit more self-conscious. I do sometimes when I'm speaking to certain people. I've had that with men and women in the past. You know, sometimes they'll remind me of someone from my childhood or someone from my past. And that will drop me into like a state where I'm second guessing myself, which sounds very similar to what you're talking about, where I'm like questioning the conversation before it's even said. You're not speaking from the heart, you're speaking from the head. And to become aware of that and hold space for it as well is kind of like the next phase. I'm totally with you on how sometimes something can like almost blindside you and you notice it as this is different, this is a shift, this is a change, this is unusual. If we can be non-reactive and just witness it so that we're not creating more perpetuity, we're not going around in a circle with it, then that's how we grow, that's how we hold space for the change, so that we witness it, observe it, and then don't react to it, just let it go. So yeah, man, sounds like you're leveling up.
Yeah, I think it's the time of the year.
What's the most out of all of the transformation that you've undergone in the last 8 years, what's the most significant or inspirational change that you've gone through, taking you from where you were before to where you are now? What's the most significant thing that's happened to you?
That's a hard question, that is. That's going to make you think, isn't it? I suppose it's working with the coach. I reckon it's a difficult one, because I feel as though the last 7-8 years had led me to this point until I started to work with this coach. And she's an intuitive coach, so she allows herself to connect with source, with whatever she connects to. But some of the guidance that I have received has been quite transformational. So the perfect example is the podcast. So I've tried to launch podcasts a couple of times in the last couple of years with little success. And the one session we did, the one key thing that message that came through was that I should launch a podcast. Within 2 weeks, I'd 2 episodes done and it was live. Because I knew it was right and I just did it. And what I've come to realise is that there's certain things in our life and certain times where something might be perfect. So like the podcast. The podcast seems to be flowing like there's no tomorrow. I'm almost 2-3 more episodes to do tomorrow. No, 2 more. Tomorrow and next week. And then I'm up to mid-February. The editing, everything just seems to flow dead easy. With regards to, I've tried to do coaching, but each time I try to do coaching, I seem to be hitting a brick wall. Now, our mentality as human beings is okay, it's not working, keep hitting it harder, and eventually it's going to break down. But not necessarily, because what I've come to realise is that you could keep doing that and keep being in the same place you already are. Whereas if you allow the things that flow, like a podcast, you just kind of flow with it. And
Exactly.
so the most transformational time period has been the last probably 3 or 4 months where I've been working with this coach, because I've suddenly got somebody who can assist, and I feel as well I'm also being assisted by powers bigger than myself.
Yeah, I hear you, man. With regards to the way that the podcast is now flowing for you and what you were saying with the coaching, where you keep hitting a brick wall or you keep butting up against something, I'm listening to an amazing book at the moment called Transurfing Reality, and it talks a lot about blocks and barriers and resistance and a pendulum, and it's really interesting. Highly recommend it. With regards to some of the Psych K stuff that you will have done in the past, you'll know that, you know, our life, our energy, our direction, our wealth, our relationships, everything in our life is guided by our unconscious. And the more in alignment we are with our unconscious desires, our soul's true purpose, the easier things will come. And sometimes there's a belief, there's a mindset, there's an attitude, there's a character trait or something like that that is in our way from our past, from our conditioning, from our childhood, teachers, parents, media, that's in our way that stops us. So we almost come up against this like wall, like you were describing. And it's not until we remove that psychological wall or that belief system or that idea, that personality trait, that we can then, you know, move forwards and start doing the coaching stuff, which will be more in alignment with who you want to become and who you are becoming now.
There's the idea that I'm not, because it's a brick wall, I'm not saying it's done and dusted and not going to do it again. But what I feel as though it's more or less, at this moment in time, put it aside. We can come back to it later on.
Exactly.
So I've come up with this kind of system where it works for me anyway, where I will just kind of sink into myself. I'll see a picture in front of me, like podcast, and then I'll ask myself, is that right? And I see it like an open door. Whereas with the coaching, I see a brick wall, and with speaking, I see a door slightly open. So that's an opportunity. It's coming ahead. But there's moments in time, it's the podcast. And so it's that idea that all these things, if you start to follow your passion and go wholeheartedly in with your passion, quite often that can lead to your purpose.
Exactly. And I'm sure at some point in the very near future, that wall will start to be dismantled, or you'll take a trowel and can go and make a doorway within that wall for you to easily pass through. So overall, how would you describe the difference between who you were before all of this personal transformation and who you are now? Like, how has your trajectory in life changed? How has your relationship with self changed? And what are you looking for in your relationships? That's friendship relationships as well as romantic relationships. Now that's different to what you was looking at before.
So with regards to before and after, I feel so much more lighter. I feel so much more equipped. So I'm not saying that I don't get what I had in the past. Yes, now and again, old part of me, like the Mr. Nice Guy, might come back in, but now I've got the tools and the awareness to realise that and to change accordingly. With regards to now, I just feel so much more lighter. I feel so much more me. I'm able to focus on my own thoughts more and focus on where I want to go. So with regards to where I want to go, it's not an ego in any way, but I feel as though I've got a big mission, a purpose, and I don't know what it is yet, because I feel as though I'm almost being drip fed the steps as I go along. Now, I might have this idea of a vision that I might want, but I'm not kind of attached to the vision, because I want to allow something bigger than myself, which knows exactly what I need to do and exactly the steps to come in. So my relationship with myself has blossomed. I am able to connect to myself deeper. I'm able to connect to the king. So using the male archetypes, the king, the warrior, magician, the lover. Just before this session, I allow myself to connect into the king energy. And so the king energy is the one who runs the kingdom, who is in charge of the warrior, the magician, the lover. He's the person who is he's caring, but at the same time he's able to take the action steps. He's able to say yes. He's able to take advice. He's able to be the king, have humility, to show and do stuff. And it's kind of having that direction that one of the things that I do want to do is to travel. So one of my biggest values is freedom. So to be able to go where I want, when I want, which is why I like doing podcasting, which is why I want to do coaching and other things, whatever comes my way. With regards to the relationships, I must admit I'm a personal and spiritual junkie. I just love to do the work, and that's never going to change. So I kind of want somebody, a partner, who wants to do the same.
Yeah.
Who wants to grow, wants to have deep conversations, who wants to have fun. One of my other values is playfulness, to have a play. And it's so somebody with some similar values, adventure, fun, freedom, love, they're my values, wisdom. And it's kind of allowing myself to find somebody who kind of is very similar to myself, who wants kind of the same path. Because one of the things I would like is to have with my relationship, is to have a partner who has their own stuff, but also I would love to do work, whether it's workshops, whether it's retreats, with my partner as well.
Yeah, I hear you, man. When you find her, can you let me know? And let me know what group of friends she's got, because I want one. I want one of those too.
But it's being in a place of allowing, and this is a hard one to understand. But it's kind of knowing. I know she's there underneath the surface. Spiritually, she's there, but it hasn't happened physically. And is the idea to allow that person to come into my life by just going out and enjoying my life and carrying on and doing my own stuff, and she will come.
Yeah, man. I hear you, and I'm in exactly the same process as well. Came off of, I was on a couple of different dating apps last year. I finished the relationship that I was in, and I've been single since January last year, just because I've been focusing on business. I've not been interested in dating anyone. I've been concentrating on self, which I have done in the past, but it just seemed like the right thing to do. And I've come to the time now where I feel like it's maybe right for me to meet the right person, but I'm not in any particular rush. You know, I know, like you said, I know she's out there somewhere, and I will meet up with her at some point when the time is right. Man, I know you're going to be a successful coach and podcaster. You said you were doing some PT, which I'm sure you're going to be super successful at. I am super interested, because, as you know, I am too, about some of the tantric stuff that you've been doing as well. And just to elaborate on that, for me, similar to everything that we've discussed so far, like tantric work and work related to tantra is not necessarily what people might think it is. You know, when I speak to some people, they think that tantra is just like everybody just having a big orgy, when in actual fact it's difficult, it's challenging, it's hard work, it pushes your buttons, it brings up stuff in you. Yes, it can be a lot of fun at times, but it also is one of the most challenging things I've done over the past 12 years. But also the most amount of growth that I've experienced in the last 12 years as well. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey with Tantra and those kinds of practices as well?
So I must admit, I am very, very fresh at Tantra. So I've done a bit of reading books and a few online courses. Haven't been into any Tantra workshops as of yet. So, but for me, my journey with regards to starting to explore Tantra is that I've never really had a good relationship with sex, and it's the idea that sometimes we aren't taught what sex really is from a man's perspective, how to treat women. And I must admit, I'm working through a porn addiction at this moment in time, which has created this stagnated perception of how I see women, shall I say, which is why I'm starting to work with Tantra. The idea is seeing women as an object rather than as a person and a being. Now, I realise my ways, and so this is why I've started to incorporate Tantra into my own life, and obviously to work with the divine feminine in quite a big way. The courses I've done is more about incorporating sensuality into our daily practice. So the one I did was about kind of touching your body, rather than seeing your energy in your penis, allowing that energy to kind of travel up your body so that you can start to feel sensations. So you can start to build that orgasm in the body rather than in the penis, because we see sex as pleasure. Whereas I've come to realise that with Tantra, you can have pleasure, but it can be within the body, and you can kind of have that kind of spiritual experience. Yeah. So that's and I'm very fresh and very new. So it's very, and I think I must admit there is a lot of, for me, when it comes to Tantra, to do is sex, because of how I've been brought up. There's a lot of fear for me around that. But one thing I've been taught is that fear is, I've just turned the word fear now into the unknown. So I see that now as the unknown, so it's stepping into the unknown.
And most people in the UK will resonate with this. In the UK, sex tends to be something that happens behind closed doors. Nobody really talks about it. Nobody really talks about the spiritual aspect of sex, or making love, however you want to term it. I must admit, I've been practicing lots of different styles and I suppose practices within Tantra for the past 3 years. And just to give you, I loved how eloquent you were with what you just said as well. It's very helpful for people listening to this. It must have been a year ago now, I disconnected my orgasm from my ejaculation. So now I can have full body orgasms in any part of my body that I want to, whenever I want to. I'm still learning, I'm still practicing. I'll probably work with a tantric or tantrika, someone who is able to guide me, and using breath work to heighten certain sensations and hone my practice. But for me, this is a lifelong journey, and being able to pleasure myself in a spiritual way gives me the ability to do that with women as well. And the journey that you can take women on through this particular practice is like nothing that very few people will experience in their life. A really powerful experience to go through. It is like combining sex and spirituality at the same time. It takes a lot of work. For me, there was a lot of shame kind of wrapped in, being naked around groups of people, or having a shower, or being in a naked sauna. Or I was at a festival last year where the only showers available were in a sauna area with a jacuzzi. So for me, I had to go and shower naked in front of a room full of people. First, that was my first experience when arriving at the festival, and I was like, right, this is how it's going to be for the rest of the festival then. So it's been a process of, literally, like we were saying earlier, a process of unlearning, of peeling all these layers back of, what's underneath the shame, what's underneath the fear, as you say, or what's underneath what's unknown to us at the moment. I fully appreciate your journey with Tantra, and all I can say to you is it's an incredible journey, and I'm really excited to hear how you get on with that as well. Because there's a lot of fun to be had with it, a lot of exploration, a lot of joy. There is, challenges like anything else, but it's an incredible process to go through. Have you read The Multi-Orgasmic Man?
I haven't, no.
That book for me was a game changer. There's so many different ways of doing things to help us to become multi-orgasmic. I'll put a link in the show notes for it and get you the book over. But it's one of those books that you can pick up and read a couple of chapters and then put down again and pick up and try something else. There's lots of different things in there that you can play around with, that you can practice, that you can try, that you can work with. So we are pretty much at the end of the episode now. Really, really like the synchronicities and the journey that we've both been on is like a mirror. You say one thing, I've done that. I say something, you've done that, and it's very, in alignment. And I very much look forward to speaking to you again and meeting up as well in the future, doing some ecstatic dance and learning more about what you're doing, getting our funk on.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to see how your podcasting develops. I've tuned into quite a few of them now, and they are really, really insightful. I love how you're bringing out the best of what people are bringing to the show and showing how people have changed. How they've improved their lives. Thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, James.